Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Too Much Apparently, a podcast for the deep feeling, overthinking, emotional humans who've been told they're too much apparently.
We're two therapists who are also just sensitive weirdos trying to make sense of life, healing, and our own brains. This isn't a professional advice podcast. It's more like the messy, honest conversations that happen when you finally feel safe enough to say what you're really thinking.
This space is for people like us, the ones who've been called too sensitive, too serious, too emotional, too intense, and have spent way too long believing that it's true.
In this episode, we're talking about what it's actually like to start something new when you're full of feelings, self-doubt, and being perceived. Yes, the fear of being perceived is real.
We'll share who we are, why we made this thing, and what you can expect going forward. Spoiler, there will be honest conversations, the occasional trip down a rabbit hole, laughter, and definitely no toxic positivity.
Okay, on with the episode. This is where we have to know how to actually start a first episode. What are we doing?
We've done an introduction.
We did
the introduction. I don't know what my face was doing while you were reading your bits. I don't know if I wasn't continuing to smile or what, but
I think I just had plastered a smile on my face the entire time.
Yeah. But I was concentrating quite hard on like, when is Carly going to finish? Get ready.
I think we did all right.
Yeah.
I think we should probably say who we are.
Yeah.
When you introduce yourself so often in lots of like different spaces and things like that, it's hard to, you feel like you know what you're doing, and then suddenly you don't know what you're doing, who you are, or what you do.
Yeah.
Or I think sometimes it's about wanting to get it right, like don't miss anything important.
Yeah.
And is this the part where we're overthinking just saying our names?
Yes.
Let's just say our names. Hello, I am Carly Radford.
And I am Alice Chu. It's just so hard to start, isn't it? Okay, I'll get there in a minute.
Should I look away? Will that help?
Because then the video will be the top of your head.
Oh yeah, people will be like, what is she doing? I keep forgetting that it's also being recorded.
Oh dear me, that's funny. Okay, so I'm Alice. My pronouns are she and her. I've been working as a therapist since 2014. I'm based in Cheshire, but I have worked entirely online since the pandemic. I work with people who are dealing with the impact of having emotionally immature parents. So that's often parents that are very critical or very afraid themselves, quite anxious themselves. So often they are young adults who look very successful on the outside, but privately are struggling with anxiety, perfectionism, relationships that just don't feel right. And they're trying to figure out who they are underneath all of the expectations. Lots of work around the inner critic. So my own therapy journey started because people kept telling me I was too much in various ways. And to be honest, I'm still figuring myself out. My first therapist told me something that stuck. There's no jazz hands moment where it's suddenly all sorted. But therapy really does help to make it less painful and to help you be more comfortable with who you are and live a life that feels right for you. I definitely don't have it all together. I can be really organized in some ways. I'm completely messy in others. I'm very much a heart on my sleeve person, and I've learned to be not just at peace with that, but actually proud of that. And what I've discovered along the way is that self-compassion works so much better than self-criticism for actually feeling better about yourself. You cannot hate yourself into becoming somebody you love. It just does not work that way. What I've also realized since becoming a therapist is that I'm neurodivergent. And that's really important for me to take into account when I'm thinking about who I am and how I want to be. So that's me. Over to Carly.
Hello, my name is Carly Radford. I am a psychotherapist with a background in nursing, and I have been working online as a therapist in private practice for getting close to sort of 5 years now. My pronouns are she, her, and professionally, I specialize in working with sensitivity in all of its forms and how that can show and develop whether or not we feel we were born that way or became that way through life experiences. But for me personally, I was certainly born that way. I have always been described as being sensitive, and I'm very used to hearing all of the twos: too much, too serious, too quiet. And for the longest time felt that those were bad things and I needed to be the opposite of that. And I needed to be something different, which has manifested in lots of different ways in my life. I started trying to address that and try to see things differently, but it's probably only in recent years that I've really started to take that on board. And Alice and I, both being therapists, met, well, quite a few years ago now.
3 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, at least 3 years, isn't it?
Hmm.
Yes, when we were both doing an online course about online therapy, and then we did coaching group together. And all I can say for me is that when I saw Alice spoke in the group, I just thought, oh, she's really cool and she knows what she's talking about. I like how she puts things. And I thought, oh, her to be my friend.
There's a really good thing there about my internal experience of that. You listening to me and thinking, oh, she seems really cool. That actually my internal experience was, oh my gosh, I need to say something, rattle something out, and then afterwards be like, oh, what have I said? I sounded so silly. Really kind of capturing yeah, that kind of the inner critic, I guess. And
Mm,
and the mismatch between how people present on the outside and what's going on the inside.
yeah, absolutely. And I know we spoke about that before, our experience of one another in those group spaces that we've been in and how it's totally different to how we
Yeah.
feel inside and how we think that we're coming across
Yeah.
in a way that, I've said things to you and you to me, and then we're both surprised that we thought
Mhm.
that about one another.
Yeah. And I think for me, there's something about how intensely I feel that on the inside. It kind of feels inconceivable to me that other people can't perceive it. That's definitely part of it that I'm realizing.
Yeah, I think that comes up a lot in so many different areas about how we think that we're being perceived versus how we actually are being perceived in those spaces.
Hmm. Yeah.
It might be worth saying how we got from there to starting a podcast together.
Right. How did we get there from starting a podcast together? Well, actually, I feel like this is born out of our friendship and what our friendship has been. That willingness to be really honest and vulnerable with each other. And thinking about the first few times that we'd meet in person and then text each other and be like, I'm spiraling. And just to be able to be honest about that, just to be able to say like, oh, I'm having this intense emotional experience, and can I just check, are we okay? And to get that reassurance from each other. And
Yes.
then just over time that we then haven't needed to do that.
You are, I think, one of the first people where I've also allowed myself to just name what's gone on for me when you've left,
Mm.
where that fear of like, oh, I can't say that, that's too much, or that's too needy, or that's going to put that person off. They won't want to be my friend anymore. Where I don't even know what it was. Well, probably something about you. But something within that where I didn't listen to those scripts in my head of that's not an okay thing to do. And actually, I would just message you and say, oh, I feel like I was too emotional, or I feel like I was really negative, sort of when we met and things along those lines where I've just been able to put what I've been sitting with.
Yeah.
And it's scary. It was scary. It actually still is scary to do that. I think yeah, it's the first time where I thought, no, just do it.
Yeah, I think there's something important there for me in this podcast. And what this podcast is about is other people being able to see that there are other people out there that you can say these kinds of things to, that actually it's helpful for them to hear it. It was helpful for me, when you message me and say, oh, I'm sorry, I feel like I was too negative, or I feel like I was too this, that, or the other. Because there's an invitation then for me to go, oh, I was also feeling da da da. Um, yeah, and don't know what the point is there. Feels like there should be one.
And that's the end of the podcast.
Yeah.
Lost that point. There you go. Well, I think you were making a very good point about how sometimes if we can be brave or courageous enough to do the thing we think we're not supposed to do, that it opens it up for then other people to sort of do the same. And then it means, oh, okay, maybe this is okay. And maybe I can do this with this person. And it lead to a really positive thing whereby in which you then feel closer in your friendship. that person.
Yeah. And it is a scary and vulnerable thing to do. Um, but yeah, maybe there's a future episode in there about how you might identify the people that are safe to do that with and the ones that maybe are not
Yes.
anyway.
I'm thinking about what assumptions people might have about, I guess just about therapists, but also about me and you sort of doing this podcast together. So, what is something that you think people assume about you as a therapist that perhaps isn't true?
No. Probably that I'm sorted. I think that's
Mm,
the general kind of expectation of therapists um, that they've always been sorted or that they've been through their own therapy or done their own work to become sorted and that life is just kind of free flowing uh,
mm,
and not difficult. And that's definitely not my experience. I think about life happens and throws you off course and you have to look at things again from different perspectives. I suppose that ties into what I imagine some people will think about us doing this podcast. So I feel like I've got two sides to this. So when I think about the people that I meet up with, that I'm friends with, I feel like they're going to be really happy for us, really supportive, really be able to recognize how important this is. And there's definitely some kind of nervousness around people. I suppose that stereotype of this therapist as a blank slate, that this really is not that. This is quite vulnerable and open, and that maybe this isn't professional. Um, but I think there's something really important in. I think there is something really important in even therapists modeling the messiness. There's a quote that I wanted to throw in when it comes to being sorted and being healthy by Pete Walker, who says, health is not liking yourself when happy, peaceful, fulfilled, or aiming for only those states, but an attitude of self love and self respect during times of sadness, disappointment, and fear. And I kind of hope that this podcast goes some way to supporting people with that because it is really hard to do. When life's going well, it's all, even as a therapist, I can slip into like, oh yeah, finally I've got it together. And then something will come along and I'll be like, oh no, how am I anybody's therapist?
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's just sort of that notion that you have to be here, be at that point of happiness, peace, contentedness, and anything that's not that is that you've slipped and you've got to get back to that again. So, this notion that you've gone backwards and now I've got to get back to that.
Hmm.
And I think over time, one of the things that I have just come to accept for me, and thinking of it this way might not work for everybody, but I just try to think of life now as pretty much a neutral experience.
Hmm.
That you don't have to reach happiness and contentedness. That actually is pretty much neutral with challenges and some good things sort of thrown in there overall. But I really like what you said about the importance of, and I would agree, about also therapists being able to show their messy humanness. And don't think you or I have ever been blank slate therapists. It's not something that I personally would respond to very well in a therapist either. But I do think that there is that perception of that we have it all together.
Hmm.
And it's probably not something to go into too much, but I do think there's a lot around coaches which people can maybe view a bit similar in terms of therapy, where often the narrative is, I was here and now look, I'm here and I can help you get here too. And I think it's important in this podcast for us to say we're not anywhere.
We're
Um,
right here in all of
we're
our
with you.
glory. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we're alongside you. This podcast isn't about we were here and now we're doing a podcast to help you get here. I think this is just about no, we're in it with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And that really kind of touches on the perfectionist piece that shows up a lot in our clients. I guess just how tempting that illusion is that somebody else looks like they've got it all together and therefore there must be some path I can follow to have it all together.
Yes, and I wonder if that offers comfort for people when you're not feeling great, that you can see or believe in someone else has figured this stuff out and now is up here And that means there's hope for me too. And so I wonder if that belief also offers a certain level of comfort.
Mm.
And then now I'm thinking, oh, are we just destroying that comfort by saying, oh no, that's not what it's like?
Yeah, no, and there's something about the both and, isn't there? About healthy doesn't look like that. Healthy doesn't look like the polished, pristine, got it all together after photograph. Um, that how would what would I say it looks like? It just it it looks more real. It looks more, I suppose I think about it as the difference between analyzing and intellectualizing all your thoughts and making sense of it and feeling like, well, I understand this really well, and actually in your body being able to tolerate and feel what you feel and respond to those in a way that is beneficial for you and the people around you.
And also, on top of that, knowing that you're capable, that you can cope, that you can get through and do hard things and things pass and, you'll be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So that kind of self belief, self trust, um, being able to cope. Maybe that's the difference when you're really in that space of being completely overwhelmed with your emotions and really feeling out of control and probably being surrounded by people that are reinforcing that. Um, being surrounded by people that tell you that you're too much, that is really hard to cope with. And I think then through therapy or maybe through other ways, understanding more about where those negative self-beliefs come from, why you struggle to regulate your emotions, that, that's a skill that we have to learn. It's not something that we're born with. Um, yeah, again, the points just slipped out of my head. I could feel it going. Yeah. Um,
Flying away.
um, yeah, that there is a comfortable place to land. It just probably doesn't look like how you expected it to look in the beginning when you were looking at perfection and thinking, I want some of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think as well, if you are somebody who really identifies with feeling too sensitive, too emotional, dramatic, take things too seriously, I need to lighten up. Yeah, if you're someone that really identifies with this level of intensity, then of course life feels intense. And I
Right.
think that increases our ability to feel like we can't cope because we're taking in so much more data and sensory information compared to other people, that I think that increases our sense of this is too overwhelming and, I can't cope with this. And it is something that still shows up quite a lot for me, this idea of can't cope.
Mhm.
It's almost like rather than the not coping, I get anxious about not being able to cope.
Yeah.
So sometimes before there's even a problem, I'm already worrying about if there is and I can't cope and what that will look like. So it's almost spread
Yeah.
into anxiety about not coping rather than the not coping.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's something really important here about being autistic, that there is a specific kind of anxiety when you're autistic, which is that anxiety related to your autistic traits. And that, because there's a reality to that, isn't there? That if the environment is too stimulating, then we might not be able to cope with it. And so I think there's something about picking out what is helpful in that anxiety and what is limiting in that anxiety in a way that can be changed.
Yeah. And ultimately, knowing that when we operate this way in the world, we go through really difficult things all the time. And we're, we're still here. And
Yeah.
so even during the times when we can't cope, don't get me wrong, they're horrible, but we do come through and get through the other side. And I think the more, like you said, that we can develop that self belief that we can cope, or when we can't, we can still be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ultimately, I think helps with that.
Yeah. So, Carly, tell us about how this podcast came about.
Well, I wanted to do a podcast for a while. Lots of things have gotten in the way of that, not least of which is what would that actually mean to be out there talking about things, personal things, and just the process of being perceived. Put a lot of barriers in the way, but then started to talk with you more, and then you were really keen on the idea. And I think because you and I, well, we're the same but different, but I think our similarities really lend itself to what we want to talk about. And I know for me personally, growing up, I did not have any messaging that how I was in the world is okay. Not even just okay, but actually like great, good. Not saying it doesn't come with its challenges, but more than okay. And so I have a real passion, and the things that sort of really affect me on a really like thought feeling off level is for myself and where I see it in other people who have essentially sort of shrunk themselves down, lost their voice, and struggled to be authentic some in situations, and ultimately just feeling like that sense of invisibleness that essentially we sort of end up doing to ourselves because of how we maybe have been treated or the messages that we maybe have been given. And I'm so passionate about wanting to help change that for people and in myself. So I want to start this podcast ultimately for those where maybe therapy is not always accessible, or maybe it's not even the right thing for them at this moment in time, still to be able to access support, education, information, but also community and feeling, oh, I'm like that too. And so that maybe, I don't know, it might be a bit grand, but my vision is sort of having this army of people who are like stepping forth and reclaiming their voice and being seen in spaces and taking up space. And that's ultimately the why.
Yeah. And I'm just catching a hint of that too muchness in when you're saying that maybe it's too grand. Like, no, bring your grand plans. That's how we make great things. Yeah.
Because I think that's going to happen a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely is. Yeah. I still, when I think about why, I just think about the moment kind of sitting on your sofa and when you showed me about it and just being so excited. I think like you have, kind of thought about doing a podcast. Like, oh, I'd really like, I love listening to podcasts and I've wanted to have my own. And I've kind of dabbled around thinking, oh, maybe this, maybe this. And so when you showed me this one, I was like, no, this is absolutely it. This is, this really is it. And what it comes down to for me is kind of similar to what you're saying around my own personal experience, but also, the experience of a lot of my clients, and a lot of other people that I meet, that what they have within them is the idea that they are the problem, and really just wanting to change the discussion around that. That there are lots of different reasons behind the too much. Like too much is almost like this one big blob. And actually, when we start to kind of unpack it, that there are really good reasons for being the way that you are, whether that is the innate kind of being born this way, or whether it's because of things that have happened to you or that haven't happened that should have happened. Yeah, that I feel like that's a kind of like a foundational piece of who I am as a person and a therapist, that when you look closely at things that feel like they don't make sense, that they really do make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that.
Uh,
One of the things it's making me think about for this podcast, and we're going to be using terms like too much now, I guess quite a lot. And I think one of the things that's important to say is, well, firstly, we aren't too much, but also there's something for me about reclaiming that sentence, as well. So maybe can also that be okay?
yeah, and I think that links back to the piece about this is not about toxic positivity. This isn't, it's not going to be like, oh, don't worry, you're not too much. Like, just don't think about it. Just love yourself, accept yourself. It's not like that. I think there is also, so alongside unpacking what does too much really mean, and celebrating the joy that can come with being various versions of too much, is also looking at the limitations that can come with being too much. I'm doing air quotes there. That can come with the underlying struggles. I suppose I'm thinking about, the positive side of being an emotional person, that Well, for me personally, that is the backbone of what I do with my entire life as a therapist. I need to be an emotional person. I use my own my own emotions, my own body to help people get more in touch with their own emotions and body. But the flip side of that is that I can feel things really intensely, and that can be really heavy going. Like if I'm going through something big, it can really kind of knock me out for a little bit. Yeah, so acknowledging again, coming back to this both and that, there are really beautiful and positive things that we can appreciate about being too much. And there are limitations as well, and that we can hold space for both perspectives and all perspectives, really, as we work through these episodes.
I think that would also be important from the perspective that there are going to be some episodes that might be more, heavy going, because what we're talking about also holds quite a lot of pain and shame for a lot of people. And so at times, episodes will get a bit real from those perspectives.
Mhm.
And there will also be lightness and laughter. And I think sometimes, even in the more serious, a bit more heavy episodes, I really hope we can still bring lightness and laughter to those episodes as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Embrace it all.
yeah.
It's
Hmm.
interesting you saying about recognizing that you're a really emotional person and how that benefits you in work personally, but also sometimes, the drawbacks. And because there are all those traits that I often think this way of being in the world, is sort of as a double-edged sword. The things can very much feel, like you said, sort of like positive and beautiful and traits that we absolutely wouldn't want to just suddenly get rid of, but at the same time recognizing that they can also cause challenges. And, we can dive into how to embrace the good side and also how to live with the challenges that can come alongside.
Yeah. So if you had to pick one too much trait that actually makes you a better therapist, what would it be?
Oh, good question. I mean, I feel like it's a bit of an obvious one, but many times I've been told that I'm too caring. That's a thing. Too caring, too kind. And I kind of feel like that links a lot with sort of being really empathetic. And there are terms like empath or hyper empathy, high empathy, whatever it is that you want to call it. But I feel that that is something that I have always been sort of deep in my bones for people, animals, the planet. And I really feel it on a visceral level in my body. Again, I think that lends itself so well in the therapeutic space.
Mm.
It's also recognizing personally. It also caused me lots of difficulties too. Uh,
Right.
but I also wouldn't want to lose that. I don't know who I would be if I didn't have that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It is so important. And maybe we don't need everybody to be that way. Um, but society needs people that care a lot and valuing our individual differences and what we each bring to the table.
Yes. Yeah. I might be biased because it's my way of being in the world, but I do think we need more people.
Yeah.
More people like that. I do think that the world that we live in needs more sensitivity, needs more care, needs more compassion,
Hmm.
and less greed, power.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And well, almost to pick that up a bit and flip it on its head, that actually being emotional and being sensitive and being caring is a real strength. That it's a vulnerable thing to do, and therefore it takes strength and courage to do that.
I absolutely agree. And it baffles me how society does not see it that way. I don't get it.
It's the patriarchy.
Feels like it often comes down to that.
Yeah, yeah.
Always find ourselves there.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's so hard to wrap my head around when you can see the real sort of beauty and the real strength and courage and bravery that it
Mhm.
takes, to be that way in the world.
I was watching Love Island last night, and I was so pleasantly surprised. So I don't know if you watch it,
No,
but there
I've seen it once.
Right. Okay. It is absolutely a guilty pleasure of mine. I love it. I really love watching how the different relationships, and I mean friendships, not just the romantic connections, kind of come together and come apart, and watching how they manage conflict and so on. But yeah, so last night there had been a lot of fallout, and there were a lot of tears, and a couple of men were crying, and it was just so lovely because for once the men were supporting each other and were saying, let it out. One of them even wiped the other's tears with his finger. It was
Oh,
really lovely, and I just thought, if only there was more of this. Yeah, it was such a touching moment. It
yeah. Oh, that does
really
sound
stood out to me.
Yeah, that
Mm.
does sound really nice. I did watch one series, but that was because in my therapy training, they encouraged us to watch reality shows like Love Island so that we could sit and try to figure out what people's attachments to those are.
Ah, clever. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do with homework, really.
I sometimes feel like there's not enough thought. Like even with Love Island, there's been a couple of seasons where they've put people in that are really not healthy, that absolutely will have been damaging for some of the other people in. Um, and I don't like that. I don't like that lack of care just for the purpose of entertainment.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, there are some really positive things in there. That was really how I got into it, actually, was I was really curious about conflict management and watching these people be able to say how it is, that they didn't kind of dance around the edges and, oh, it's really sorry, but oh, or like tell themselves like, oh, it doesn't matter, that they just kind of stood there and were like, I didn't like this. And watch the other person be able to kind of stand with them and go, right, okay, yeah, well, this is what I think, and work through and resolve it. Because that's something that I don't feel like I've had modeled to me very well. It was really interesting to watch people be assertive, to kind of know how they're feeling and be able to express it and be met with someone who can hold that. Yeah.
I really relate to that, whether it's on reality TV or actually whether it's just on normal fictionalized TV with characters sort of doing that with one another. And I get that for TV, it's about, drama. It needs to be interesting, whether real or acted. But ultimately, a lot of the things that people do on TV are not the things that I would dare do in real life. And so often I've just watched certain like difficult conversations happen, or where a friend says to another friend, like, actually, you really annoyed me when you did that, or I feel hurt by what you did, thinking, I feel like this doesn't happen in real life.
Mm.
And maybe it does for some people, but in my life and in my world, and or for someone who also didn't have it modeled, I've never known how to do that, but always wanted to do that. And how interesting that conflicts a bit with sort of this idea of too much. But I think that comes back to silencing ourselves, not wanting to be seen as causing an issue or being dramatic or anything like that. But then, we don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think being able to do that is so important. Not that I find it easy, because I really don't find it easy, but what I do recognize is that it brings a solidity to the relationship that you wouldn't otherwise have if you're constantly kind of dancing around each other. That when you're really able to say, look, this is how it is, and take that risk that that relationship might end, that friendship might end, but also gain the opportunity to say, this is how I feel, this is how big it is, and have the other person go, yeah, okay, that's reasonable. That there's something really healing in that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess when we do that with safe people,
Yes. Yes, absolutely. With the safe people.
with the safe,
Yeah. Yeah. Let the safe people need a name. Um,
the safe people, yeah, to come up with a name.
yeah. 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 What are we supposed to be talking about? Naming it too much, apparently.
Yeah, I think at this point in the episode, I think it's pretty clear why we called it too much, apparently.
Yeah. What was it that made us choose this name over the other potential names?
Well, as with most things, I overdid it probably with about 100 different potential themes, but this one, it just immediately stood out. It was a bit of a
Hmm.
moment, and I don't get that very often. I usually get really bogged down in all of the details and having far too many options and then thinking for ages about what's the best thing. But yeah, this one just immediately jumped out and I just knew that was it. And I think I liked it because it basically really says what it is
Hmm.
as the humor element, which I really want to be part of this podcast. We might be two professionals, but I don't want it to be a professional.
Right. We happen to be therapists, but we're here as humans.
Yes.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So, I want to take that sort of professional hat off and be like, no, you can just be Carly in this space.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So it just felt like the podcast. I
Yeah.
think that's the only way I can put it. It was very much an embodied rightness feeling, I think, for me.
Yeah, I think kind of similar to me. I think that was, why I got that like, yes, absolutely, I want to do this with you kind of feeling when you showed me is that I think I've had almost like a shape of an idea of what I wanted a podcast to be and just the name captured. It just, just fitted completely with that feeling. And I think it's both the directness of what it's about and really facing into that too muchness and a celebration of that, the celebration of it, and also the kind of the kind of questioning of that comes with apparently like who says who
Yes.
says who says I'm too much? Yeah, maybe you're too little. No, I don't.
Maybe you're too little.
I don't mean that. I don't. Sometimes I think it. I don't mean it.
It's
Yeah.
reminded me of one of the things I've said a few times because I've been called too quiet so much throughout my life is why does nobody ever turn around and say, you're too loud, you are?
Yeah.
When
Hmm.
you're at a dinner table or something, people always go, oh, are you okay? You okay? You're quiet, aren't you? Yeah. But no one ever goes, oh, are you all right? You're very loud, aren't you?
Right.
Never happened.
Yeah, and something I say a lot about who gets to decide. Who gets to decide how much is the right amount? And I like that the title of it captures that as well.
Yeah.
Because the
Very
answer is the only person who gets to decide is you. You're the only person who gets to
Yeah,
decide what's the right
that's right.
amount.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so nice to have just actually started and be talking about this. How hard was it for you starting the podcast, coming today and starting to talk about it? How are you finding it here in this moment? Because I think the reason that I'm intrigued by that is because of how much it relates to perception, sort of of ourselves and doing something new and putting ourselves out there when maybe we've tried to not put ourselves out there.
Yeah. And I have had, I think my strategy over the last few weeks has been just put it out of your head. Because every time I think about it, I just get waves of like, oh my gosh, can I even do this? And even, like yesterday and this morning, and I'm messaging you, and I'm like, she's going to say she's nervous in a minute. Surely she's going to say she's nervous in a minute because I am so nervous. And you didn't. And I'm like, oh. Um, but I think just trusting that we'll find our way through, that together we can find our way through. I think that's been really helpful for me. But it has been a really nervous thing. Um, and I feel like it's getting worse as I'm talking about it.
It's just
Reminding me that
awful.
other people, yeah, reminding me that other people will be listening to it. And, as I'm thinking about that, kind of particular people are popping into my head and, what are they going to think? What are they going to think? But I just keep trying to keep bringing it back to what do I think?
Yes.
What do I think? And I'm really enjoying it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. And I'm gonna steal that a little bit for myself as well to think, okay, well, what do I think?
Mm.
Because yeah, I try to not acknowledge the nerves and just step into avoidance compartment. It's almost like it's not happening
Hmm.
until the moment that I'm, sat in this chair saying, hello, and we're hitting sort of record. But I think, yeah, doing anything new is scary when you kind of have carried this fear about what it means to be perceived, but also to be perceived publicly. Yeah. I feel like we've done quite a good job at maybe saying who this is for. Do you think, is there anything that you feel like you might want to expand on?
So one of the things that I've got down is like being like feeling like an outsider. Like that's really common um among people that I work with and also something that I really recognize for myself, which I think again goes back to that sense of having these really big feelings on the inside and looking at everyone else and being like, well, they don't feel this way. So yeah, that kind of sense of being an outsider, watching it look easy for everybody else and wondering, what is it? What's wrong with me? I think that's quite a common phrase. Yeah. And maybe I'm just repeating myself here, but again, just this idea that you're not broken if you feel a lot. Like that's not. So what's popped into my head there is that this is only quite recently, even, is a recognition that a lot of people in my life who've told me that I feel too much or that my emotions are too big, it's not that they are healthy and they're dealing with their emotions well. It's that actually they're quite avoidant of their emotions and the way they cope with life is to squash them down.
Yeah.
And really that recognizing of, oh, actually, my emotions make sense and they are a really reasonable response to what has happened to me in the past or what at that point what was happening to me in the moment. And it was a really convenient way for them to shift their discomfort about my emotions back onto me rather than to kind of turn into themselves and be like, ah, Alice is feeling this way. What might that mean for me and how might what I want to respond to that?
Absolutely. It's essentially that classic, you know, not for people not willing to see that they might be the problem in this interaction. So they put that back on you that you're the one that's being the problem rather than them not being able to tolerate an emotional
Yeah.
response or conversation happening in front of them.
Yeah. 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 And again, this isn't about, like, I want to say it's not about big emotions not being a problem or being a problem, that it's more nuanced than that. That sometimes a big emotion, how do I want to say that? I feel like there's, I feel like there's probably an articulate way to say it that I can't quite, I'm like kind of grasping to try and grab hold of what I'm trying to say.
Say it in a
Well, almost like it's
inarticulate way.
yeah, like it's like having big emotions is simultaneously a problem and not a problem in that. So I suppose I'd say it's not a problem in that, like I said before, there will be a good reason for it. There will be a really good reason for why you feel the way you feel and the intensity that you're feeling it. And so I suppose when I think about it being a problem, what I think about is, do you have the right support to be able to manage that? And what support can we offer through this podcast, with that kind of caveat of this is not therapy, this is not a therapeutic podcast. But absolutely, I imagine that we will talk about what things have supported us with our big emotions and all the other kind of too muchness, the overthinking as well. Um, yeah, that's my inarticulate way of saying it.
I think you put that in a good enough way. I was going to say perfectly, and then I was like, no, I'm going to say good enough.
Great, I'll take it. So what are people actually going to get if they stick around?
I think ultimately we're here, we're not promising sort of solutions, but we are promising honesty. And I think if people stick around, they can expect some themed episodes, likely some conversational rambles, probably going off down some rabbit holes, but also a lot of depth and hopefully humor. And we've got some ideas for what we would like to cover, especially in the initial episode. We're looking at things like sort of too tired to heal, too loud inside my head, too serious for small talk. And yeah, I want to try really hard to sort of not be too performative and polished. I think realness, just showing up as we are, is important to us. And hopefully that then makes you feel like you are sat with us, sort of having this conversation. I think ultimately, for me, it's less about what the content's going to be, but more how I want people to feel when they listen to the podcast. And I want people to feel like we're all friends,
Hmm.
that we're all in it together. I want it to feel funny, but also just cozy and nice and supportive. And I want it also to bolster and empower people. Sometimes the notion of fully accepting your sensitive self in the world can, maybe sound a bit radical, but I want to embrace that radicalness. I want us all to go out there and start to show up in the world as us
Yeah.
and know that that is good. That is enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is a real challenge, isn't it? There is a real challenge in that, to be authentic. That is risky, but so worth it. So worth it. Yeah.
And perhaps if we're scared to do it, but we're doing it here too,
Yes.
maybe others might feel able to as well.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I just want to have a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things I really enjoyed last night was when you mentioned about the idea of a jingle as an intro for the podcast. And I was like, oh my God, yes. And you said the idea of coming up with it. And so last night I was like properly trying to brainstorm, come up with some more jingle ideas. And I
Have you got
feel
one you
that's
want to
probably
say?
going to be so cheesy and maybe even a bit lame, but also I don't care.
Embrace the cringe.
This morning, Defying Gravity came on, and I'm not really sure we could do this because I have a feeling it may well be copyright infringement. But in my head, I suddenly just started singing, "Just you and I, too much apparently."
Yeah. But you would have to sing it. I would not be able to sing it.
No, you can sing we could do harmonies.
How many singing lessons have you had?
Many.
I've had none at all. You can harmonise with yourself.
Yes, I could try that. I could try that.
Mhm.
Oh, shame we can't do that because that'd be perfect. Because then it's like, they'll never bring us down. I feel like it fits.
But I'm just too tuneless, I'm afraid.
Are you really tuneless? Are you really?
Probably. Yeah. Yeah. I got accepted into my primary school choir,
Oh, see?
but I think everyone apart from like 2 people did, which is pretty harsh, isn't it? For the
It's
music teacher
harsh.
to
What?
exclude a couple of kids.
Only a couple and everyone else gets in. I don't feel like they do that nowadays.
No.
Yeah. I feel like now is maybe the time that we should probably be bringing it to a close, or we'll probably be talking for the next 5 hours, knowing you and I. So it's a bit like, how do you now end this thing?
Mm-hmm. Are you just waiting for me to respond to that? You pause there like you're waiting for an answer from me. How do we? I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. We should have written this down. Maybe I think I would like to just say I really want to thank you for being here and listening, to the start of hopefully something that you might want to stick around for. I think I really want people that are listening to know that it's not something that you have to take notes on. You don't have to be turned on as such to be here. You can come without pressure. You might disappear for a bit. You might even forget this podcast even exists for a while, and then you might find your way back to us. But whoever and wherever you are, it's nice to have you.
So you've heard all about us now, and we'd love to hear more from you. So what's something you've been told you're too much of? We'd love to hear from you either on our social media at Too Much Apparently on Instagram or TikTok, or via email toomuchapparently@gmail.com. What can people expect from the next episode?
So our next episode is titled Too Much and Not Enough, and it's going to explore this common contradiction that people can feel within themselves.
Believing this can have a huge impact on our self-worth, and you can end up contorting yourself into shapes that don't fit, trying to find that impossible sweet spot where you're just the right amount of everything for everyone. That's all from us today. If this episode made you feel a bit less alone, the best way to help us reach more people is to subscribe, rate the podcast, and follow Too Much Apparently on Instagram and TikTok.
Those simple clicks help other sensitive humans find us when they need it most. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon.
Yeah.
We did one.
Woohoo!